The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Howdy.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hello, hello.
So let's get right into it. The first topic we want to discuss right now is actually from a listener question. And let me read her question. This is listener Teresa who sent it in. She says, hello, I enjoy your podcast so much. Thank you for doing it. You're welcome, Teresa. And she says, I've passed various episodes along to family and friends, and I feel like it's helped me understand new areas of technology. I have questions about doing a Windows backup. I know you're mostly Mac people, but not completely, as you will soon see. I had to interject. But I'd like to ask anyway. I've read articles about the latest Windows update breaking things. I'd like to back up my Windows 10 before I do the update. However, the various articles I've read give different information. For instance, how much space do I need on a hard drive or thumb drive? Should I use a different drive from the one in which I do file backups? Do I need other equipment? How long does it take? What are the risks of not doing one? I feel a bit of a time crunch since we can no longer indefinitely put off updates. Thank you so much. So I held this question for this very episode because I knew, yes, we are mostly Mac people, but I would have the mama nerd with me tonight, and she knows Windows stuff. So, Pat, this is for you. So go right ahead, and if you can field that one.
Okay, there's a couple of short answers that I can give, and then I'll talk about a little bit more detail. But basically, you should assume that you have to have the same amount of disk space for a backup as you've got data on your computer. And if you're trying to do an image backup instead of a file by file, it really needs to be the same size or larger than your whole hard drive, because most imaging software just makes a copy of it bit for bit onto an external drive. So that kind of rules out thumb drives, because those just usually aren't anywhere near big enough. And that's the biggest thing. So I usually recommend an external SATA drive, and you can get one, the little very small drives for like $59 for a terabyte drive. So it's a fairly reasonable way. And then you've got a good backup of all your system once you've done that. The second thing is that it's going to take hours. I just finished one yesterday to test it, and I've had it take on different people's machines between 6 and 28 hours. The one I did yesterday, I've got about 1.8 terabytes, and it took 24 hours.
Wow.
And the other thing that she asked was, does it have to be a different drive? And I would say, you don't want all your eggs in one basket. You should always put a backup on a different drive that you have for file backup. In fact, I have gotten a lot of older, cheaper drives that I'll keep an image from 1 month, and then next month I'll use a different one to make an image on.
Yeah.
I just don't like the chance of one backup ruining the other backup when if the media should fail. It really doesn't need any other equipment. Most of the external drives are self-contained. They plug into either the USB port, or on the newer Macs, you can get a cable that will plug directly into the USB-C port. And the biggest risk is the time involved to rebuild everything if something goes wrong. Now, with Windows, they do let you now, with the latest version of Windows, you can postpone it for about 45 days, I think, to say, I don't want any updates at all. I'm working on a project. I don't want to get interrupted. So you can go in and set that in the newest version. I think the previous version was maybe 30 days, but for a while you could not delay it at all. Microsoft didn't want you to do that. The other thing is that what software do you use? Now, Windows has a couple of things that's built in and therefore free. They have an image backup, but quite frankly, many times my image backups using Windows don't finish. They'll find some file somewhere down in a hidden area that they don't like, and so they won't finish the backup. So that's one method. The second method is that there is a Windows 7 style backup, but it's a file backup. It's really not an image backup. So I've gone to looking for third-party software, and there are two very good free ones that are out there. One is called Macrium, and their product is called Reflect. But the one I use most frequently is by a company called EASUS, EASUS, and their product is called To Do. And they have paid versions, but their free versions, I've made sure that I can back up and restore one file or a folder or the whole thing from those free backups. Now, their paid versions give you other things that you can do, but they're actually quite good. And so I would suggest using one of those instead of using the Windows image backup, because I've just had it fail so many times. So that's the quick answer. I believe Dom can attach a piece to our documentation to go through a little bit more detail on those.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that does happen is when you do an upgrade or an update, Windows does have what they call restore points, so that you can set one, and if something happens, you can drop back to the previous restore point. The problem is that Windows is not usually setting this as a default. Most of the machines that I go to work on, the restore points are disabled, or they're taking zero space, which doesn't do you any good. So if you can go in and turn on restore points, that will help you in some cases. But if you've already gone to a new version, you can't go back to a restore point from an older version. That does not work. The other thing that Windows does is when you are making an update from one version to a next, they give you a place at the time that if something goes wrong, most of the time you get the option to say, oh, this didn't work, we're rolling it back, and then it takes 45 minutes or more, and then you're back to where you were on the previous version, if you're lucky. But there have been times when something failed. The people involved could not tell me what they did wrong. I've had it fail on one of mine, and I'm real careful about not turning off a machine in the middle of an update, but occasionally it'll just crater. And the only thing I've been able to do in most of those cases, if I can't get a restore point, if it won't let me get back to the previous version or uninstall the latest update, I have to get a program that I can back up the data, reinstall Windows, reinstall all the applications, get all the settings back, get the data placed back, and we're talking 2, 3, 4 hours, depending upon how much it is. So that's the risk of not doing a backup first.
Yeah.
Even with a backup, you still may have that much work,
Right.
but you won't have your data if you don't back it up.
Yeah, there's some universal concepts in there too for whether you're a Mac or Windows.
Oh, yes.
I always say, if a file doesn't exist in 3 places, it doesn't exist. You might as well, you're walking on a tightrope without a net. I always have 2 local backups here, like 2 separate drives, and then I do offsite backup I use Backblaze, and I'll talk more about that later on in this episode. A little hint and a preview of later. So backup, the time it takes to back up to your drive, we talked about like 6 to 28 hours. Some of that's dependent on how the connections your computer offers. If it's USB 2, that's going to be the longest. If you have a computer that has USB 3 or USB-C, or if you have a Mac and you have Thunderbolt, those are all progressively faster. But yeah, so definitely you want to another thing to point out is you want to do regular backups, not just when there's a big change coming, because like when you're doing a system update, keep a regular backup. One of the things that you want to realize is all hard drives are going to fail. They are mechanical devices, and they will eventually fail. I have a note in my task manager that I use that for every hard drive that I'm using of when to buy its replacement. I plan ahead of time. I think I max out it I'm kind of conservative. Every 2 years I replace drives, the backup drives, because a backup drive that doesn't restore because there's something went wrong internally, it was a waste of time, all those backups I tried to do. So those are a couple things I would add to that. But that.
Right. And the other thing is make sure you've got backups in multiple places, as you said,
Yes.
and in multiple formats. In other words, one image, one file by file backup, maybe another one that is, of course, in the cloud. But like, for instance, if I'm doing an image and a backup that's file by file, I usually have a different product. In other words,
Right.
One might be one brand and one might be another, because you might get to a point where that software is no longer available, or it's got a problem and you didn't know it. So if you've got multiple methods, this was more aimed at this emergency backup.
Yeah.
But yes, all the things that Dom's saying about if it's not an automatic cloud backup or an automatic scheduled backup that's always plugged in, it's not going to get done.
Right.
I've had too many people that said, "Oh, I meant to."
Yeah, my wife's laptop, she carries it around, so it's never like connected to something all the time. And I have a note in my task manager: tell Melanie to plug in her backup drive
Before she goes to sleep.
Right. And then I have to nag her: have you plugged it in? Have you plugged it in? And she gets mad at me. Stop bugging me. I'm going to keep bugging you until you plug it in. So you might as well just do it right now. So she does it eventually, or I go find the backup drive and the computer and I do it myself, which is usually what I end up doing. But yes, always.
Yeah, if you have a docking station somewhere that you always put it at night, that
Yes.
should be where the hard drive is and it gets plugged in.
Yes,
at that point.
She doesn't.
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
For our listeners who may not be aware of the difference between these, you mentioned an image backup and file backup. What is the difference between the two, and pros, cons to those systems?
Right. Well, an image backup is a bit by bit exact carbon copy of whatever drive that you have, so that if something happens, that you can just put a new drive in there of the same size or bigger and restore that image right on top of it. Now, that image doesn't do you a whole lot of good if you're going to a new computer, because that image will only fully restore on the same hardware. So a file by file backup, which is normally what your cloud backups are, it'll back up everything in your profile. And in both the Mac and the PC, that's your pictures, your music, your downloads, maybe downloads, your documents, favorites, those types of things. It doesn't back up the operating system. It doesn't back up your settings. You've got data, and that's really all you have. And you really need it for different purposes, So now, it used to be that an image, the only thing you could do was do a full restore. Now the software for both Macrium and ESUS, basically I can go in and browse that image and pull off a folder or pull off a file. And so that's really a good thing. The other difference is the image is a snapshot right now, where a lot of file backups are cumulative and will most of the cloud backups, in fact, that's my requirement. They have to be versioning. So when you're getting it backed up, you not only have the latest copy, but you've got several copies old, maybe up to 30 days prior. Because ransomware, if it gets a hold of a drive and a backup gets done afterwards, then your backup is bad. It's corrupted. It's encrypted. So I always want a versioning backup, file by file, and an image in case I need to restore quickly.
On a Mac, that can look like Time Machine Backup. That's a file by file.
Mm-hmm.
You can clone the drive. You can do imaging on a Mac. I don't think it's as common on Macs as it is on Windows.
Really not.
So I do cloning, and the cloning is also versioning. The cloning software I use is Carbon Copy Cloner, and it does versioning as well as cloning. And then I use a cloud backup and that sort of stuff. But that's a good point. Is you want to have versioning as a backup. And Dropbox, as wonderful it is, because it does versioning, people think it is backup, but it is not backup.
It's synchronizing. It's not a backup.
Right. Just like iCloud Drive is not backup either. So you need backup in addition to those things. I mean, I use it as a way of keeping data safe because it's in the cloud. If God forbid something were to happen to my house, my Dropbox,
it's one more place for it.
Right. All of my files are in Dropbox safe, for that sort of major catastrophe. but other than that, it's not really backup because I'm working on it on a live basis, on a daily basis. So that's not backup. You don't work on your backup files.
Right. The other thing you did mention was Time Machine. Windows now has, for the last, since Windows 10 came out, they have what they call file history, which is basically Time Machine on a PC. Yeah. And it works pretty well. But just like Time Machine, there are times that you have failures, that something inexplicably goes wrong and you can't always recover. So that's another reason to not trust just one type of backup. Have multiples.
Okay. Well, Teresa, I hope that was helpful. I hope you got some good information out of that. I mean, that was a lot of great information. If you need any, if anyone would like more detail on backups, we should do a backup show. I think we've done one once, but I think it's probably worthwhile doing that on a regular, every once in a while basis to reiterate good backup practices and what to do both Windows and Mac, how to back up your phone and your iPad and all that sort of stuff. To really go over backups, because too much data gets lost because people don't have good backups. I've seen people crying at the Apple Genius bar because their photos were lost. Not so much anymore because of iCloud Photo Library, but in the past. So backup. All right. Thank you, Pat. So let's move on to our next segment, where we're going to talk about a couple of articles that recently came out. As everyone is well aware, for the last 4 or 5 months, everyone's been working from home more than usual, although I think the three of us work from home already. Our primary workplaces are in our home, but more people are working from home than we have. And there's been it's become in a sense, it's a giant, unexpected, and involuntary mass experiment in how changing how our entire society works, which has left some sociologists and industrial psychologists and others who think about such things with a lot of data for, well, what does this look like? You couldn't go and say and change how a giant corporation works for fun, for an experiment, but this tragedy became an opportunity. So there's some interesting things out there, and one of them is this article in Harvard Business Review from the Harvard Business School, where some Microsoft scientists, some researchers there, studied how their own people dealt with, and how Microsoft, the trends they saw among their workers working from home. And there's some interesting things that they found about the change in how people work. One of them was that people were working longer days, so they were on, so to speak, at work 4 more hours per week on average. But what they found, it wasn't that people were spending more time at their desk, but they're changing the way their day went, so that they were more likely to take a break to go, take care of something for the kids, or go for a walk, or exercise. There wasn't just this giant block in the middle of their day that was 8 to 5 work, that they would, start earlier and a little later, but they would take more breaks for personal stuff in the middle. I thought that was very interesting, and frankly, it jibes with the way I've always worked from home. I've worked from home off and on in different jobs, to some degree or more, for the last almost 15 years, and that's the way I've always looked at it. Is I have a body of work that I need to get done. If I need to go out and run an errand in the middle of the day, if I need to go to help my kids with a math problem or something like that, I do it because I get my work done. So what do you think? So that's the first thing that they found, was that it was people were working more, but it wasn't just working more. They were just longer at during the day, a block of time that they were available for work. They found that people weren't distracted during meetings as much. So you'd think, as Zoom meetings, that's an opportunity to kind of be doing some other things. They said they weren't multitasking during meetings, which I think that was amusing. But
Noodling.
Yes. But they did find that there were blurring of work-life boundaries. One negative thing was also that they found that people were that commute time people normally spent commuting was being repurposed for meetings, which is not a trade-off I'd like to make. And there was a lot more information in that. What do you guys think? What did you think of this information about how people, one, how they studied how people use the tools, and that was the basis for understanding how people were working, but also how people's working habits changed, and what it might presage for our future of work in this country. What do you think?
I think you already kind of pointed out a few of the really cool things. Is that I think just a more free flow of our day is just more natural to who we are as human beings. A good friend of mine, when COVID hit, he started to work from home, and he had a 6-month-old, my goddaughter. And so like he was able to be there with his wife when, the baby needed something. And so there was a give and take there that wouldn't be possible with him, in at the office. And as you were talking, for some reason, all I could think about was elementary school. And the fact that like, just kind of sitting in an office or, being on 8 to 5, maybe in more of a desk job, that's just so contrary to like our nature and what we're meant to kind of move around, and we shouldn't be just kind of stagnant. And in elementary school, what do is you go out, play at recess,
right.
Mid-morning, mid-afternoon, and you kind of break the day up. And that sort of thing just allows you to refocus better when you run off some steam, or, you go for a walk, or, whatever. So I think there's some real benefit to that. I think that there's some dangers though as well. And one of the dangers that I can think of, and it happens to me because currently the rectory is literally the second floor of the office building. Mm-hmm. And so for me, there's no real clear separation between home life, rectory life, whatever you want to call that, and the business side of being a priest. And that can be a bit frustrating because you and I imagine many people would feel this way if they're working from home, is that it's almost too much of a blend between home life and work life. And where do you make those boundaries? And, you could be working more than just 4 more hours a week. You could sort of, overextend yourself that way. So I think working from home is great as long as there's sort of a dedicated space to it that you can close the door and kind of separate out. Another downfall is just our need for community and social connections that you miss when you can't get to the office. And that was something that was mentioned, is that or maybe that was the other article, but you're not like you're not going to be able to just catch up with your coworker around the water cooler, because in a Zoom meeting with your entire staff, you're not going to be, catching up with your buddy sitting next to you before the meeting starts. You're kind of, it's strictly business, and it's not the place for that sort of thing. So we're missing that aspect. So we've got to kind of, be aware of all of that. So it's, there's a lot of interesting things here. I think a lot more people will probably work from home because of this. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know. I don't think that's a bad thing at all, but I think there's some dangers to watch out for as well in terms of just our social nature.
It was interesting. It did note that there were more people were scheduling more one-on-one meetings to kind of replace those lack of interactions around the water cooler or before and after meetings, or in the hall, so that people were like creating virtual social meetings to compensate, because we do crave it. We do crave that interaction.
The company my son works for, one of my sons works for, basically encourages the, hey, drop in and chat with your buddy, type thing. And it doesn't have to be about work all the time. Yep. And so they're kind of realizing that you need to keep those social connections and those casual connections, whether it's through a quick chat, hey, have you seen this, or hey, I was thinking about listening to this type of music, or whatever it is, keeping the social kind of in mind during the day, and not being just so strictly focused. The other thing I worry about, though, is it's great for us who are kind of in the middle America, where we have a place that we can say we can get a room and make it into our office. there's so many people that are crowded 8-10 to a house that there's no way that they can segment out that time. And I really feel for them, because it's got to be so much more of a stress. Yes, they're there to help with the baby, but maybe they don't have the time to get their own work done. Mm-hmm. And then their bosses get on them for that. So that's kind of a worry to me.
I wanted to throw in when you were talking about the one-on-one meetings with people. I think that's a challenge for a certain group of people, and I would lump myself in them. Those of us who are introverts. Yep. I find it stressful, like feeling that I need to like do unless it's like with family or really close friends, but just kind of coworkers or, acquaintances or people in the office, I would feel stressed out knowing that like, oh, I should do a Zoom one-on-one or a Skype call with them. I work so much better in like just walking by the office and dropping in and saying hi. And that feels more natural and more comfortable for me than, the one-on-one video chats. The extroverts, on the other hand, yeah, they're gonna thrive in that, because they have much more of a natural ability to reach out in that way.
Yeah, an introvert having to do a one-on-one like Zoom, Skype, FaceTime call, you have to like it's an attention drain. Like it's like draining your attention battery, because you're one-on-one. There is no escape. Whereas if you're sitting, like especially for guys communicate best when we're standing next to each other at a bar, at a car's under the hood, doing a thing. Sitting here staring at each other is hard. It's hard for us. So especially if it's one-on-one. So yeah, I agree with that that sort of interaction is hard. And another thing that is an interesting aspect of all this is that the boundaries, they talk about the boundaries between, say, like people who used to protect their weekends. My weekends are for family and not for work. They found that those people are blurring those lines, and that there's like, they say there's a new night shift taking root where employees are catching up on work at night, like say after the kids go to bed, more so than they used to. I mean, people have always done these things, but more people are doing it than before, because again, when you're at work, quote unquote, all the time, which is your home, it becomes easier to do. And so that was very interesting. Right. And one of the things they found too is that the managers have a key role in all this. For one thing, they're bearing the brunt of the shift. They are spending more time in meetings and doing this sort of work having to do with, but also employees who average the most weekly one-on-one time with their managers experience the smallest increase in working hours. So good managers are key to making this work from home stuff work. So that's then begs the question, how do those managers become good managers? And there needs to be more time spent on that. So it's a very interesting experiment we're all doing. I think that this, I've long advocated that it's dumb to get in this day and age for all these people who work in cubicles all day long to be sitting in one building that they've driven to, far away from home, wasting gas, wasting time, and all those resources. When even if people don't work from home, to have, I think we should have like big corporations or even small corporations have regional small offices that people go to when they need to work from home, when they need to. I think that flexibility because of what technology has given us, the ability to be flexible, I think that's the future. That would be nice.
Yeah, I'd like to see more of the, work so many days at home and then work, a part of the time at work when we do get back to being able to work, in an office. There, for one thing, as you say, that you could have a smaller space because maybe it's a shared space now. It's not a dedicated office for each person. And so you could do, and you'd still have the casual interaction and being able to see people once we can figure out, how to do this safely. But yeah, I don't want to see it going back to all big businesses. Now, it does start begging the point of what do you do with all these big structures? Can you use them for something else? Like low income housing, like other types of
high-rise
places for
playgrounds.
gathering. Yeah.
Just kidding.
What?
High-rise playgrounds with
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
these skyscrapers have like slides between the floors. I'm just kidding.
That would be cool. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I guess there's some real pros and cons. And one of the things that my son mentioned is that he liked working from home, but it was isolating in some ways. And for an introvert who may be going through, who could go through depression once in a while, you need to be able to get to see some people.
Yes.
You don't want to just shrink into your own little cave.
Right.
So I can see where there could be some mental health issues that need to be addressed in how do you keep people from folding in on themselves or overextending themselves or getting addicted to work so badly because there is no other outlet and they're always home. You know, those are things that really need to be considered.
So I'll put links to both of these articles. They're both good articles. The second article is from Forbes, which is really a survey of studies on what's going on and what they've found over the past few months. One of the things you mentioned, like mental health issues, one study found that over 40% of people, and this was in March and April when things went early on, 40% of people said their mental health had declined during the COVID-19 outbreak, which is frankly no surprise to anyone. Yeah. I think we'd all agree with that. For that, a lot of us we're more stressed, more anxious. Our mental health is taking a hit. So there's a lot of other good data in it, and some pros, some things that say, hey, that's good, some things to be concerned about, and as most things. So check that out. So let's talk about some headlines, and there's some interesting ones. It's summertime here in the northern hemisphere, and that means for some of us travel a bit, or at least getting out. Let's say let's say getting outdoors in fact, that's actually they found is more people are going hiking and spending time out in the great outdoors and the far away from other people than before. And one of the things that people are concerned about is keeping your phone usually charged on the go, and you know people carry batteries and stuff like that. Well, one of the things that has been sold for years are these solar powered chargers. Everyone wants to think, if I'm out hiking, the sun is beating down on me, I've got my backpack on or my day pack if I'm just going out for the day, why am I not using the sun to keep my battery charged? And so there's a couple articles here that we linked to from both NBC News and Popular Science about foldable solar panel chargers. Now, the one from PopSci, I have to point out, is a sponsored post, so it's from people trying to sell things. But are solar power charges worthwhile, given how slow most of them charge? Do either of you have any experience with them, or any thoughts on whether you'd want to use one?
I have no experience with them.
Stephen had some experience with one, but it was slow. It was nice if you were out camping in one place. You could spread it out and let it be gathering the sun while you were out hiking. But yeah, I
tend to use a battery pack,
right?
Because I can charge that, you know, beforehand and then take it with me. I guess I'm sort of, I don't know. I'm having an internal debate on whether or not I would want to be out hiking with a solar panel for charging my phone when the whole point is to sort of get away from it all. I mean, I totally get it for pictures, and I love it for that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think I am at all inclined to go out and get one, but I do use a battery pack, especially when I'm traveling, not outside hiking, but when I'm like, you know, traveling across the country or on an airplane or, you know, those sorts of things. But if I'm going to go outside, I'm more likely to rely on whatever battery power I have left. And if the phone dies, well, then I'm just going to, you know, enjoy the rest of the walk and, you know, call it good.
Okay. You're not concerned for like emergency purposes, or
maybe it's because I'm in my 30s. I am not that concerned about an emergency situation, and usually my outdoor activities are at the park here in Cheyenne. You know, it's not like I went backpacking a couple times, and I realized very quickly that is not for me. I can do it, but
I thought everyone in Wyoming was an outdoorsman into the Grand Tetons and the Rockies.
I'm sorry to dispel that image that you have, but yeah, no, a friend of mine, he's actually a really good friend, and he's another priest, but back when I was younger, I thought I needed to do everything that he did in order to be cool. So he convinced me to go backpacking. He also convinced me to do half marathons, which I continue to do. Okay. But I've just totally derailed my train of thought with that.
No backpacking for you.
Oh, yeah. But I don't foresee at least myself being in a situation where that would come in handy for an emergency situation.
All right.
If I'm going to go backpacking, people are going to know where I'm at, if I don't check in by a certain date, because you can't contact anybody out in the middle of nowhere.
That's right.
If you don't check in by a certain time, then they'll send emergency people. But you can get satellite phones if you're concerned about that sort of thing. That can help. But we kind of went off on a tangent there.
How about you, Pat? Solar power charging?
I wouldn't be interested for myself, but I have some friends that do go backpacking or camping for 2 weeks at a time or traveling a lot. And I can see where, again, not carrying it with them necessarily, but wherever they're going to be spending the night, setting it up and letting it charge during the day while they're out doing their thing.
Yeah.
I can see that. I really just don't see carrying around a solar panel with me.
Yeah. I have this gigantic battery that I have. Like it can jump a car. It was one of my picks of the week ages ago. I mean, it's big enough that you could actually jump a car with it. I use that when my family goes, but like we go car camping. We don't hike camp. The kids are too small for hiking camping. That's my excuse. And so so I use that to charge overnight, in the tent. I have a bunch of batteries, but I got a solar power charger a while ago. I've tried it. It's so slow. Maybe the new ones are better, but what I have seen that are cool are the little camping stoves that are also chargers. The heat energy is converted into electrical energy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're a little expensive, but I thought that was kind of cool. So I don't know how fast it charges. Well, now for something else you might want to take with you on your hiking trip, and frankly, I wish I had one in my office right now. Sony is launched a wearable air conditioner / personal heater. What it is, it's this little puck-sized device. It's like an old flip phone, so it looks like the size of it. And you have a special T-shirt that has a pocket up on the nape of your neck, and you slip it in there and turn it on. And of course, it's got an iPhone iOS or Android app to control it. You turn it on, and it cools you. It's a personal air conditioner or heater. You have a lot of big veins going through your neck, close to the surface of your skin back there. So that is a good place to cool you off. My office where I'm sitting right now is the hardest room in the house. And so I've been looking at this going, it's $130, but I wonder.
Have you considered one of those igloo packs that you could freeze and just put on your back?
Yes. How did you get frostbite in your house? Yeah. Well, that, and I'm wondering if hopefully this personal air conditioner doesn't get hacked, and somebody it's like an episode of CSI. How did he die? How did he get frostbite in his house? Anyway, but I thought this was fascinating. It's only available in Japan right now. You can, although if you want to, you can get one imported. What do you think? Do you think this would be at all useful? Do you think it would work?
I hope so. It's funny because our office building here at the cathedral is old enough that my office is a constant 75 degrees, and we have got HVAC people to look at things and try to figure it out. And there's one of our employees who's across the hall who's in the same zone as me. Mm-hmm. She constantly runs cold and I constantly run warm. So the climate is sort of geared more for her than for me. And if we both could have one of these, then I could be cool and she could be warm, and it would be fantastic.
Exactly.
I do not want to spend $130 on it, though. So, Dom, if you want to get me a Christmas present,
yes, I'll put that on the list.
That's what I
Put
would
it
want.
on my list.
Oh, well, the
right?
nice thing is it also works as a heater, so that'll be midwinter.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I could see a personal heater probably easier than I could see a personal air conditioner.
Yeah.
You know, for when things are really cold. But then again, you're talking to a Texas gal, so
The article
I
says
don't like cold.
The article says it can cool your body by 23 degrees Fahrenheit and raise body temperature by 14 Fahrenheit. I'm thinking they don't actually mean like literally giving you a fever.
Yeah, that would be dangerous.
I'm not sure what they mean by that, so that's an interesting question. But well, how did he
In
end up
fact,
in the
you
hospital?
don't want to drop that much either, because that would, yeah.
Hypothermia.
No
Yeah.
kidding. Start shutting down. Anyway, so more to find out on that one eventually. Maybe it'll come to America as a regular product. Our next headline it concerns Netflix. Netflix, if you are the owner of a Google Nest Hub or Nest Hub Max, which are the smart assistants from Google, you can now watch your Netflix shows on it. Because if you don't own a 42 or 65-inch TV in the other room with a home theater attached, now you can watch it on this tiny screen on your assistant. No, I'm just kidding. Well, frankly, people more and more are watching content on their phones and on their tablets and not watching it on the big screen. I don't get that, but I'm an old man, so that's you kids get off my lawn.
I only do it when I'm traveling.
Yes, that's a good point. So,
but I wouldn't bring a Google Nest Hub with me.
Yeah, right.
That's true. I was going to say, I sometimes when there's multiple people in the house, one's watching one set of things, I'll take my iPad in the other room and go watch something else.
Right.
But that's still a little bit bigger than. So does the Google Nest Hub actually have a screen then?
Yes.
I didn't know it had a screen. I just thought it was a hub for managing all the appliances.
No, it's sort of like the Echo Show from Amazon, which is the Echo that has a screen. So they have the hub has a screen on it, and you can cast to it. So if you're watching Netflix on your on the app on your phone, on your iPhone or your Android, you can cast it like you Google Cast to the hub and keep watching it from there. I suppose it's like for, either like in a bedroom or kitchen. A lot of people have TVs in their kitchens. That's not something I do, but yeah, we only have one TV in the TV watching room. But yeah, it's an interesting idea that you can. I like the idea that you can cast it, that you can go from one device and just play it out, like sort of like AirPlay on an iPhone to a Apple TV. So that's a nice little trick that they got there. All right, so I think that's enough for our headlines now. I do want to move on to our picks of the week. And Pat, what's your pick of the week this week?
Well, since I straddle between the Mac and the PC world, I recently have been doing a lot of remote control with people at home, and I've got a paid-for product that I use, but I've had other people talking about, in fact, family members saying, I'd really like to be able to control my computer from somewhere else in the house, or help my son or my niece or whatever it is be able to help me with a problem. And so I started playing a little bit that Google Chrome has a remote desktop feature that you can add an extension, and then it has two different ways you can use it. If I set it up on one of my machines and I'm logged into Chrome with a particular user ID password, I can set the same thing up on, all my machines, and I can, from downstairs, check to see what the status is on the backup I'm doing on the upstairs computer, whether it's a Mac or a PC. It's an always-on connection. Mm-hmm. The second way you can use it is just like TeamViewer and some of the other things. You can say, I want to be a either supporter or supportee. And so the person who wants to do the support wants somebody to help support them. They call it up. They get a number. They tell it to that person on the phone. or text, and then the supporter enters the remote desktop and says, I want to help somebody. So, and then you have to, it's like a 16-digit number. So it's not something somebody could just guess and get into your machine randomly. So it doesn't have all the features of file transfer and multiple screens and things like this that the professional products have. But for somebody who just wants to be able to help a friend, or to be able to be somewhere that their main computer isn't and they're working on another computer, that's real helpful. As I say, I've got an upstairs and a downstairs, and even though I've got more sophisticated products, the Google one is great for me just being able to be downstairs and check to see whether the backup I was working or the repair thing I was working is working on somebody's machine. I can just do that.
Excellent.
The security is such that that's a 16-digit number, and when you give it to somebody, they only have 5 minutes to get in, so it then becomes invalid. So they're really looking at security pretty heavily. And as I say, if you're logged in with your own user ID password on 2 machines, you've had to do some Google security to get there. So I think it's a pretty good product for casual use.
Nice. Yeah, that I've used it in the past, and it is useful for that sort of purpose. Excellent. Father Andrew, what's your pick this week?
So my pick is going to totally label me as a millennial, but that's perfectly okay. So my pick is actually 4 years old, which is also something kind of unheard of in the tech world. But if you were at all aware in the summer of 2016, the phenomenon that Pokemon Go was, and so actually that's my pick this week because it is 4 years strong. And before I go into kind of why or what's going on with it and me currently, I want to point out there's an article that we will put into the show notes on it. But so Pokemon Go this year surpassed $3.6 billion in revenue over their 4 years. And so this year alone, 2020, they have gotten $445 million, which is the most since or actually ever in terms of a half a year chunk going back from the get-go. And the reason that I bring it up and that I have it my pick of the week this week is because Pokemon Go, for those of you who don't know it, it's a game on your phone that you go out and you catch these virtual monsters, but it's tied to real life GPS locations. So the whole point of the game is to get out, walk around, see, iconic places in your city, and you can catch these virtual monsters called Pokemon, and you can battle with other people in real time and that you meet that are playing the game. But the whole point of the game is to get out and to get connected with your community, and you gather in groups and you go do a raid battle together. And so it's a game that is not meant for COVID, to put it bluntly, because you're supposed to get out and interact with people. And so Niantic, the company who developed it, quickly they didn't really change the game, but they added so many features to it for it to be playable at home without the need to get outside and get out and walk. They were able to make it so you could battle each other remotely. You could join these raids remotely and do all these things without having to be in close proximity with one another. And so they added all these things to it to make it playable for those who are at home and not able to get out. And because of that and all the other changes they've made over the past 4 years, they've made $445 million in revenue. And also to point out, this game is completely free. You can play it without spending a single dollar. You can have access to all the features without paying a single dollar. But if you pay into it, you get more items where otherwise you'd get only like one of a certain thing every day. You can pay to get more. So the fact that they're making $445 million just in 2020 is absolutely astounding and incredible. And so back to me personally, anybody who knows me does know that I do play this game, and it is fun, even with COVID, to get out to the park and go for walks and not really necessarily interact with anyone, but play the game. And I wanted to just share just a little bit that our local community who plays the game as well. It's been really fun because with the game actually has a a large in-game event happening this weekend, so I felt this was pretty time appropriate, called GoFest. And the last 2 years, GoFest happens at one of the really big parks in Chicago. But this year they've made it available for a small fee, but to anybody everywhere at your home. But our local community who plays the game has been using Facebook to do sort of fun, random promotional things, completely not sponsored by Niantic, but just other people in the community who are trying to interact and use Facebook to stay in contact and sort of almost creating a storyline within the game. So there's people who have been kind of posing as the bad guys and posting, messages on the Pokemon Go group. I'm one of the admins for the group even. So I was on the good team and stole some secret information. So they posted a bounty poster of me. So I told them I'd be out at the park for like these 3 hours with actually some 3D printed Pokemon and some secret information. So some of the community could come out to the park and find me, and you can still battle and interact, but not necessarily be in close proximity with one another. So I was able to do that and pass on information. And so it's been a really fun thing to do that has also brought in the game, but also Facebook, also a community. And it's going to culminate this weekend, both within the game, but also within the community. And it's been a really cool thing to see develop and process. And all it is a bunch of people in the community who are trying to make this fun and enjoyable and trying to do something with, with all the COVID stuff. And this is just something that we've been able to kind of connect with. And it's something that I see grandparents playing with their grandkids. It's a multi-generational sort of thing. And the people that I've met through it have been just really cool and from all walks of life. And when they find out that I'm a priest that plays it, they're just like kind of dumbfounded. And then, but then it leads to some really cool conversations. And some of these people, have an encounter with a priest that they would have never had otherwise. So
awesome.
That's kind of a long story short. That's my pick of the week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Pokemon. Yep. I've noticed that Pokemon Go has developed this cult following, this grand
fandom.
following. Yeah. This fandom that goes beyond the fairly simple mechanics of the game. And there's just some spark that it gets of social connection, and it's real life social connection. That it's not just
Xbox Live.
Yeah,
it's because before COVID, but and even beyond COVID, some of these raid battles you have to be within 30 feet of some real life GPS location for you to participate together. And then that just leads to interaction and real connections with people, which is really cool.
That is cool. That's a good pick. Thank you. So my pick this week has to do with our first topic, which was backups. And I mentioned before, Backblaze. Backblaze has been my choice for a long time for off-site backup, for cloud backup for my computers. And they have various levels of backup, various kinds of backup that you can do. But the most basic is personal backup. They'll back up your Mac or your PC and any drives that are direct connected to it. So if you have a couple of very big hard drives, if you direct connect them to your Mac or PC, it'll back those up too. As much data as you got. Although if you don't have a lot of bandwidth to the internet, a good connection, it could take quite a while to do your first backup. When I did my first backup, it was like a terabyte of data, and it took like 3 weeks. Now it doesn't take up your whole, internet pipe. It tries to be a good citizen and only does it when you're not actively using it and that sort of thing. But I do have Backblaze on my primary Mac, and I have it on my wife's Mac, and it backs up in the cloud. You can restore individual files. You can do a complete restore. If you have a catastrophic destruction and you can spend a little extra and have them send you a hard drive, because downloading all that terabyte of data takes not nearly as long as uploading a terabyte of data. So you don't want to do that. So they can send you a drive, and it's like the pricing. I haven't even looked at the pricing lately, but I think it's still like around $5. It's $6 a month. Yeah, it went up $1. So $6 a month or $60 a year. You get 2 months free if you do a whole year at a time. So it's a great deal for a peace of mind. And if you live anywhere where there's possibility of natural disaster, or if frankly you're worried about if you live where your house could burn down, which is every house, it's the same thing. So this Backblaze is the one I choose. They have some other products that are really nice. They have a competitor to Amazon's AWS or S3 storage, which is a kind of separate kind of cloud storage. It's if you don't know what it is, you don't need to know at the moment. You could look it up. But they do have other products that they offer. They also have business backups, which will back up an entire business, a network, and that sort of thing. So Backblaze is my pick this week. Excellent. So I think that should do it for us this week. We do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Tony A., Marty K., Marie C., Zane C., and Deacon George. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So if you've got any feedback on anything we've discussed today, you can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. And we'll have links to all the links from our discussion, our picks of the week, and to the extra information that Pat had on backups, Windows backups. Well, those will all be in our show notes at sqpn.com. Be sure that you've subscribed to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should hit the bell to get notifications. Until next time, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Absolutely, always a pleasure.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Adios.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.